Our next speaker is Jonathan Rich. Jonathan is author of Spires in the Sun, a book that offers the stories behind Florida's surviving 19th century Carpenter Gothic Episcopal churches. Called superb and richly satisfying and passionate and discerning by reviewers, Spires in the Sun won the Florida Historical Society's 2024 Charlton Thibault Award, given annually to a work of nonfiction on a Florida history topic of general interest. Jonathan is a retired corporate lawyer who has studied Florida human and natural history for decades. A native Floridian, he lives in Winter Park with his wife, Beth.
Only a native Floridian would feel the need to wear a puff jacket in April in Florida. Thank you. Speaking of April in Florida, my wife, Beth, and I drove up to Amelia Island the day before yesterday. And we stopped at Fort George Island, and there in the tops of the trees, the yellow jessamine was in bloom everywhere. And it made me recall the immortal passage in Cross Creek. Is there any other kind of passage in Cross Creek about the Carolina jessamine and the flowers and the smell? Well, I would be happy to talk about my book, and I may a little bit at the end, but we're going to talk about Rawlings. And as you can see, the title of my talk is Writing Florida, A Debt to Marjorie Kinnan, or Kinnan Rawlings. All the images that you'll see are for eye relief, and they are photographs that I have taken in Florida. This happens to be the St. Johns River. All these photographs are at least 20 years old. All right, everybody who writes about Florida owes a debt to Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings. And here's a quote from the New York Times back in the day. All of us who write about Florida must acknowledge our literary debt to Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings. She found a language to capture the beauty and contradictions of this place, and we have been following in her footsteps ever since. As you know, writers from Zora Neale Hurston to Carl Hiaasen have acknowledged Rawlings' influence. So how is Rawlings' writing about Florida unique? Writing is an art, as we all know. It's not a science. We are not going to be able to disassemble her writing and figure out what made it magical, but we might, as alchemists, just look at some of the elements that went into the alchemy. Let's start with this. In her writings, she evoked the cosmic connection between people, animals, plants, the earth, and the universe. Here's a quote from Norton Baskin, her second husband. She drew on the theme of man in relation to the cosmos. Another quote, again from back in her time, precious to her are those eternal verities that proclaim man's kinship to his earth. And then another quote from the Miami Herald, she has the gift of identifying people with their environment so that they seem to grow together. This connectedness between humankind and the earth is found even in the opening sentence of Cross Creek. Obviously, the final sentence of Cross Creek would make a very good example of this, but I thought we would start with the first sentence. I'll read it. Cross Creek is a bend in a country road by land and the flowing of Loch Lusa Lake into Orange Lake by water. So there you have two things that are very human. Cross Creek, the settlement, and a country road, which is certainly a human thing, but blended in the very first sentence, you have land, you have lake, and you have water, which are elemental, natural things. By the way, the illustration, of course, is Edward Shenton's. It's one of two images that are not mine. So let's dig a little deeper. How is Rawlings' writing effective in evoking a sense of place in Florida? We can take it for granted that it does, right? Nobody questions that it does. But how? And the short answer is her deep immersion in the environment, her vivid sensory descriptions, her authentic portrayals of people, her blending of nature and narrative, and a poetic yet grounded style. So those are 5 things, and we'll look at each in a little more detail. First, first-hand experience. Living in Cross Creek, Rawlings became intimately familiar with the land, wildlife, and local customs. Her personal connection to the place allowed her to write with an authority and authenticity that resonated with readers. And so now an example from Cross Creek. I do not know how anyone can live without some small place of enchantment to turn to. I had always wanted to live in some wild and lonely place, but I never thought it possible that I could do so. This reflects Rawlings' personal connection to her home in Cross Creek, which formed the foundation for her authentic descriptions of the region. Here's a little matrix I developed, and I'll invite your attention to the upper left box. If you're a writer and your subjects are proximate to you and renowned, then you are in some sort of wonderful zone where you can find out anything you want about your subject. Let's imagine that you're a middle-aged woman reporter in the 1940s. You have a reputation, and you want to spend a day with Eleanor Roosevelt. The chances are pretty good that you're going to be able to do that. And if you want to write about what she wore for breakfast, what she ate for breakfast, and about her appointments of the day, you're going to be able to do that. And women reporters did do that with Eleanor Roosevelt. Well, let's go down now to the lower left-hand box. What if your subject is distant but renowned? Let's say you're writing about Eleanor Roosevelt today. Well, she was renowned in her time, so chances are pretty good you're going to be able to find out what she did in any particular week during the time of her fame. So you're still in pretty good shape as a writer. Well, now I'll invite your attention to the top right. What if you are proximate to your subjects and they are relatively unknown? Well, now we're exactly where Rawlings was, right? This is her box. If we want to find out something more about Boss Bryce or the widow Slater today, we're not going to have an easy time of it. But she was there. I mean, she immersed herself, even living from time to time with her subjects. So that's her corner. And then finally, the lower right-hand box, if your subjects are distant and relatively unknown, good luck, because that's not a great place for a writer to be. I know, because I spent 17 years in that box. This happens to be the Econ-Lockhatchee River where it flows into the St. Johns. All right, number 2, her rich sensory details. Rawlings captures the lush, untamed beauty of Florida's natural landscape with vivid descriptions of its swamps, pine forests, and wildlife. For example, in The Yearling and Cross Creek, she brings the reader into the heart of the wilderness with imagery that appeals to all senses, describing the rustling of palmettos, the smell of orange blossoms, and the moisture of humid air. And here's an example from The Yearling. I think each of us, who's done at least a little writing here? Everybody, right? We would all like to die having written one sentence as gorgeous as the one I'm about to read. The afternoon was fresh-washed and fair, and there was a tender quality to the sunlight. The trees seemed to draw close in an intimacy of protection. The old scent of bay and magnolia mixed with the damp smell of the hammocks. This passage vividly captures the interplay of light, smell, and atmosphere, immersing the reader in the Florida landscape. This is just off the St. Johns River in Central Florida. All right, our third point, cultural authenticity. Rawlings portrays the lives of Florida's rural inhabitants with respect and nuance. Her characters, often shaped by the harsh realities of the land, are grounded in the dialects, traditions, and challenges of the region, making the culture come alive alongside the setting. And here's an example again. The Negroes, descendants of slaves, live simply and naturally, close to the earth and close to the church. The Crackers are equally individual with their fundamentalism, their high sense of honor and of independence, and their fierce pride in their state and country. This shows Rawlings' nuanced portrayal of the people in her region, highlighting their unique culture and connection to the land. This is near Ozello, for those keeping track. All right, the fourth point, the blending of nature and narrative. Her works often integrate the environment as a central character, making it inseparable from the story. In The Yearling, for instance, the wild landscape directly impacts the plot and the characters' struggles, highlighting their interdependence with nature. And here again is an example. The life of the wild things was the same as the life of men, unpredictable and often cruel, but endlessly renewing. The end of one thing was the beginning of another. Here, Rawlings weaves the natural world into the narrative, showing how it shapes and mirrors human experiences in her story. That's a classic, a cypress dome up in the St. Mark's National Wildlife Refuge. And then finally, the fifth element, fifth and final, is her poetic yet grounded style. Rawlings combines poetic language with an earthy realism. Her prose captures the beauty and brutality of rural Florida without romanticizing or oversimplifying it, which draws readers into a world that feels both magical and raw. And here again an example from Cross Creek. Here in the hammock, the earth was pure again, and the ancient war between the earth and man rested in truce. It seemed a benevolent, kindly thing, the sound of the rain dripping from the oak leaves, the scent of the drenched loam, the touch of the sodden ground, and the coolness. This passage exemplifies Rawlings' poetic language, which evokes beauty, while grounding the reader in the physical sensations of the Florida wilderness. You can see that. You've got some high-flown poetic words like earth, pure, ancient, war, earth and man, truce, but then you also have, mixed right in, you have rain dripping from the oak leaves and the scent of the drenched loam. So it's a very good example of that. I'll finish with just a few more images. This is the Silver River with a spider lily in bloom there. And that is the Weeki Wachee spring run. So I promised I would say just a few words about my book, and if I'm fortunate enough to come back and join you next year, maybe I can talk a little bit about the subject of the book. This image I did not take. It was taken by my collaborator on the book, the photographer Phil Eschbach. And the book, as Flo mentioned, is about the oldest wood frame churches in Florida. It's amazing to me that no book has been written about these churches until now. Florida has not exactly been neglected by writers or photographers. There are books, as you all very well know, about oranges, alligators, Addison Meisner, the Henry Flagler, Ponce de Leon, but nobody had ever written a book about the oldest wood frame churches in Florida and their amazing stories. But now that's been done. The title is Spires in the Sun. As Flo mentioned, it won the Florida Historical Society's award in 2024. It's been acquired by the Florida State Library for the Florida Collection. It's been featured on Ben Brokebarkle's Public Radio Florida Frontiers program, and you can see what national and local reviews have said about it. And I'll mention that there's, while I am fiercely flogging sales of the book, there's nothing in it for me, never has been and never will be. All the sales proceeds go to the benefit of outreach missions of the Episcopal Church.
Did you bring copies for sale?
Yes, there are copies for sale. I'd be happy to sign the books as well. Catherine Bissett is over here to my right, your left, from the Cathedral Bookstore in Jacksonville. And we would be happy to sell copies at as low a price as they are available at anywhere. Just a couple of my images. These are not Phil's, his are even better. Anybody know where this is? Any takers? I know that there's at least one person in the audience who does.
Green Cove Springs?
Yes, it's Green Cove Springs. This is St. Mary's in Green Cove Springs. There's a whole chapter in the book about it. It's absolutely beautiful. It is possible that Rawlings was aware of this church. She probably was. I think she was aware of the one in Willaca, Emmanuel, and almost certainly the one in Palatka And it came to my mind, St. George on Fort George Island.
Yeah, right here.
She would have known about that, and indeed others. As I say, it would be fun to come back and tell you the stories behind some of these. Anybody recognize this one?
Fort George.
This actually is at Hibernia on Fleming Island.
Okay.
This is the church built by Margaret Seton Fleming, and it's called St. Margaret's Church. Easily one of the most storied churches in Florida, with a collection of stained glass windows that any cathedral in the United States would give its eye teeth to have. And here it is in the Florida back of beyond. Just an amazing church. To give you an idea of what the interiors look like, this is All Saints Enterprise. Just absolutely beautiful. A time capsule, really. I mean, this is a way to go back to the 1880s in Florida, or 1870s, even 1850s in some cases. Well, that's it for my prepared remarks. Do we have a little time for Q&A?
Yes.
If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. Yes.
I'm just curious, do you know anything about the church on Cumberland Island that John Kennedy was married at? Is that an old church?
It is an old church. I know a little bit about it. I used to know more, but I've forgotten. It is not, strictly speaking, in the Carpenter Gothic style. It fulfills the Carpenter part, meaning that it's made entirely of wood, but it doesn't fulfill the Gothic part because it's lined.
Simple.
Yeah, it's very, very simple. Yeah.
And it was also built by and for slaves.
Yes.
Yeah, not like these churches.
Right.
Could be built by slaves, but not for them.
For the video, I'll mention that question was about the church on Cumberland Island. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.